Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Rex TV. Zimbabwe finds itself at a crossroads. As the people cry out for justice, democracy, and change, the nation remains gripped by a dictatorship. President Emerson Mnangagwa, often described as a leader who rules with an iron fist, faces growing criticism for steering Zimbabwe away from democracy and plunging it deeper into despair. Yet, some Southern African Development Community (SADC) leaders have remained silent, or worse, encouraged Mnangagwa to continue on this troubling path. Many Zimbabweans feel betrayed by regional leaders who should be promoting democracy but instead appear to support Mnangagwa's authoritarian rule. Critics argue that SADC's silence and, at times, overt backing of Mnangagwa enable his administration to rule against the will of the people. But what does dictatorship mean for the ordinary people of Zimbabwe? Under Mnangagwa's rule, the nation faces numerous hardships that touch every aspect of daily life. Let's break down the devastating problems caused by years of authoritarian governance. The first and perhaps most visible consequence of dictatorship is economic collapse. Zimbabwe, once known as the breadbasket of Africa, now grapples with runaway inflation, a devalued currency, and widespread poverty. Under Mnangagwa, corruption runs rampant, with state funds misused while ordinary citizens struggle to afford basic goods like bread and fuel. Unemployment stands at alarming levels, forcing millions into the informal sector or out of the country altogether. Families are left to fend for themselves as public services crumble, and the gap between the rich and poor grows wider by the day. In a dictatorship, human rights often become the first casualty. Under Mnangagwa's government, freedom of speech, assembly, and press have been severely curtailed. Activists, journalists, and opposition leaders frequently face harassment, arbitrary arrests, and even violence. Protests are met with brutal crackdowns, and dissenting voices are silenced through intimidation. Zimbabweans who dare to speak out risk imprisonment or worse, creating an atmosphere of fear and oppression across the country. Corruption thrives in authoritarian regimes, and Zimbabwe is no exception. High-ranking officials within Mnangagwa's administration have been accused of looting public resources while ordinary citizens go hungry. Billions of dollars that could have been used to improve healthcare, education, and infrastructure have instead disappeared into the pockets of the politically connected. This mismanagement has left critical services in shambles, with hospitals lacking basic supplies and schools struggling to stay open. Another hallmark of Mnangagwa's dictatorship is the undermining of free and fair elections. The ruling Zanu PF party has been accused of manipulating election results, suppressing voter turnout, and using state resources to maintain its grip on power. Opposition parties face constant hurdles, from biased electoral commissions to outright intimidation. The people of Zimbabwe are left feeling powerless as their democratic rights are eroded before their very eyes. Under Mnangagwa's rule, public services have reached a breaking point. Hospitals lack medicine, doctors go unpaid, and power cuts last for hours, leaving businesses and households in the dark. Water shortages are common, and access to clean drinking water has become a luxury. Education, once a cornerstone of Zimbabwe's progress, is now in crisis, with teachers striking over poor pay and schools struggling to provide even basic learning materials. Zimbabwe's dictatorship has also left millions facing food insecurity. Poor agricultural policies, combined with corruption and climate challenges, have led to widespread hunger. Families are unable to afford even the most basic meals. According to recent reports, more than half of the population lives in poverty, with many relying on food aid to survive. For a country with such rich natural resources, this is a heartbreaking failure of governance. Mnangagwa's authoritarian rule has also isolated Zimbabwe on the global stage. Sanctions, trade restrictions, and a lack of trust from international investors have further crippled the nation's economy. While Mnangagwa blames sanctions for the nation's problems, critics argue that corruption and mismanagement are the true culprits. Until governance improves, Zimbabwe will remain cut off from the global support it desperately needs. Despite these challenges, the people of Zimbabwe have not given up. Their courage and resilience shine through, even in the face of dictatorship. Many are calling for an end to authoritarian rule and a return to democracy. Regional leaders in SADC must also be held accountable. By turning a blind eye, or worse, endorsing Mnangagwa's undemocratic actions, they are failing the very people they claim to represent.